Hello and welcome to ET Soonicorns Summit, and you're watching the Unicorn Playbook track. I'm Miloni Bhatt. My guest today is Trivikraman Thampy, co-founder and co-CEO of Games24x7. Vikram, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Miloni. Pleasure.
You know, it almost seems to me like you saw the future of gaming in India. Did you imagine it to be this? Where it became kind of the leader in online gaming, reaching nearly $4 billion in value as per KPMG when you started out in 2006?
You know, that's a great question. And usually me and Bhavin, we really believe in humility. It's a big part of our value system. But to be honest, at least as far as the industry goes, where the industry stands today, we really did believe that back even in 2005, 2006. I think we had a very, very strong conviction on that. And it was not just gut feel and intuition. It was really based on what we were seeing globally, worldwide. And so it was a fairly data-based prediction that we had for the Indian market. And that's continued to be our culture even today. We're very scientific, very data-based company. And really what I'm talking about here is, when we go back to 2005, 2006, when we started this business, what we were seeing globally, and by globally, I don't mean just in the US, but you were seeing in the US, you were seeing it in Europe, you were seeing it in China, you were seeing it in Japan. It was not very hard to see that as long as India evolved into a robust internet economy, that it would also be a very, very robust gaming economy. It was pretty obvious if you drew up the charts, if you looked at all of these markets and how the growth of the gaming sector and the gaming industry in these markets, which is pretty large even back in 2010, 2011, kind of coincided with the growth of the internet itself. So you had to be like a believer in India not ever becoming an internet economy to believe that India wouldn't be a large gaming market. So to us, it was, to be honest, right, and I say this with little humility, it was really obvious to us that it's going to happen. Now, the big question was, is it going to take 5 years to get there or 10 years? And I think the early years were somewhat slower than we anticipated, but I would say the last 6, 7 years in the gaming industry have just been phenomenal. And I think we're still just touching the surface right now in terms of what's possible in terms of growth going forward.
All right. Give us a sense that, when you were building it, say from 2005 or to 15, 16, the first, the decade, and then later on you said, things accelerated over the last 5, 7 years. What were the kind of learnings that you garnered, in the first decade of you being here that you were able to put to use that really, propelled you further than most, when we started accelerating?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of these learnings actually go back to be honest, to my education when I was doing my PhD in economics. And the dominant school of thought in economics, at least back then, and even to some extent, today, is that human beings are very rational. They, if you look at the most dominant economic model, it literally assumes human beings to be robots who are solving complex problems in their heads and making decisions, which really doesn't happen. Which is why Daniel Kahneman went on to eventually win the Nobel Prize talking about all the imperfect ways in which we make decisions. And I think that kind of foundational education about like how human beings actually behave as opposed to what economists would like to believe played a very, very fundamental role in how we came to the market and how we did things and shaped everything that we did. So for instance, the first thing was that don't assume anything about your customer. The first thing is always, the first and foremost, before you get to any data, is you want to be your own customer. Me and Bhavin, obviously, we're passionate gamers ourselves. So the first thing we always want to do was like, and when I say be your customer, it doesn't mean, you go and look at products and try and think at pros and cons of it, but literally bury yourself in the game and feel what a customer would feel. And once you've done that, then you really come to what we call a scientific culture, which is you test, you form your hypotheses about this is how I think players will behave, this is what I think bothers them, these are their pain points, this is what they really enjoy, but you test everything. And now when you start testing everything, you start learning very interesting things about your consumers. And the challenge then that comes is what you will eventually discover is that different consumers or different players are very different. Their pain points are different. What gives them pleasure and what they enjoy is very different. So now you need to start building systems that can deliver very personalized experiences to different users. And I think we learned very early on that if you have to do this in a scalable way, where you are able to uncover, great insights about different parts of your user base, and then accordingly deliver them very personalized user experiences, then you need highly scalable technologies. This is a realization we had back in 2013, 14 in the very early years. And so today, I'll give you one example. Today, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry which builds products to help other companies to personalize user experiences for their customers. And this is not just in gaming, this is in all digital products. We built our own personalization engine back in 2014. As I'm speaking to you, that personalization engine runs personalized user experiences, like literally 1,000+ personalized experiences on our game today. And that was possible. And that was possible again because we had these realizations very early on. We invested in these kind of technologies. Today, those things have gotten far more sophisticated. It's not just anymore, people running models inside the company to figure things out. We have a very strong team of data scientists and AI engineers that are actually building models that figure these things out using data in real time and then deliver those kind of personalized experiences. So we've come a long way, but you're absolutely right. It was those foundations in the early years, which helped us, which told us we really need to focus on scalable technology to be able to continue to deliver great experiences to our users.
All right. The headway in gaming industry is attributed in India to cheaper smartphones, growing younger population, higher disposable incomes, introduction of new gaming genres, high internet penetration rate. According to you, what is going to drive the next 5 years in gaming? When you look at the trends, what are the big trends that your company will leverage?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, right, gaming, the key levers that drive gaming, whatever you talked about are enabling factors, right? And that's happened for gaming and will continue to happen. So mobile was a huge deal. I remember 2013, we had 20 million smartphone users. By the end of 2014, early 2015, we had 100 million smartphone users. That was just, nobody inside the gaming industry could do anything to make that kind of a growth possibility, something real. And then there was, back in, I think, 2016, 17, there was the Geo launch, which made data really, really cheap and therefore ubiquitous. Again, that's something that gaming has benefited from tremendously. And gaming will, I think, benefit tremendously from the 5G rollout coming forward. And potentially also, and I'm a little bit more, careful on predicting timelines for this, but potentially also from what's happening in the crypto world. But these are what I would call enabling factors. But as far as the core business itself goes, it's always been about, gaming is always about two things. One is the content itself, and two is, your ability to deliver that content to users. As of now, if you look at the Indian market, the content that, at least from a monetization perspective, is doing really well is mostly all evergreen content. Rummy is one of the largest games in India right now, Rummy and fantasy sports. I grew up playing Rummy, learned to play Rummy from my grandmother. It's a really old game. Fantasy sports in its current avatar as it's played in India is maybe a couple decades old, but fantasy sports globally has been around again for several decades. Poker is an up and coming game, but again, it's a very old game. So most of the content in India that exists right now that's done really well is what I would call evergreen content. It's always been popular and will always be popular. What we have focused, therefore, more on is how to deliver the content, at least over the last several years, how to deliver highly personalized experiences. I think what you're going to see more and more going forward is more innovation on content. I think you're going to see a lot of content innovation. That's what's going to drive the next phase of growth. Some of that content innovation will come on top of existing game itself. So for instance, in our Rummy game today, we're starting to build what you call meta games on top of the game, that make the games more interesting. But then we're also investing in new content, new games, both skill gaming content and also casual games that we are now starting to build, not just for the Indian market, for the global market. So the Indian market's now at a place where you've got, a few large gaming businesses and then many medium-sized gaming businesses that are starting to do very well. And I think we're in a very, very solid position to start working towards becoming a gaming superpower in the world, where we're not just producing content for India, but also globally, and really start to bring meaning to the Prime Minister's vision of, gaming being an important part of the $1 trillion digital economy vision that he has.
How is, so when you innovate for the global market, or when you have a rollout for the international market, are there tweaks that need to be done? How is that market essentially very different or different in a sense to the Indian market? And, where do you focus more on? Because the growth, obviously, the scale and all of that is being driven by India.
That's right. No, I don't get me wrong. I think the Indian market is still super exciting. Our view is, and again, just looking at the same kind of numbers that we looked at a decade ago and said with confidence to our investors that, hey, this is going to be a huge market. If you look globally now again at the US, at Japan, at China, at Korea, at Europe, and you just draw the trend lines based on where India is headed in terms of economic growth, internet growth, I think India is going to be, anywhere between a $20 to a $30 billion gaming market by 2030. That's our projection. So to be fair and to be sure, India is a super exciting market and continues to be the bulk of our focus. But we don't see any reason why companies like ourselves are now not capable of competing in global markets. And to your question about how is it different? Well, global markets are far more competitive, for sure. And I think the quality of content that we'll need to produce in India to compete globally is going to be, definitely at a higher level, simply because it's an older, more evolved market. And that's going to require investment. And that's exactly what we're doing. So our investment today, first and foremost, is in people. Eventually, the high quality content. See, the raw talent is all there in India. We talk to game developers all the time, and there's no shortage of ideas, and really awesome ideas. But turning those really creative game ideas into end products that can actually monetize globally, that's a journey we need to figure out how to traverse. So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually hiring talent globally now, people at a more senior level. And our goal is really to use this global talent that we are hiring to turn the kind of more raw talent that you have in India into more polished talent. So we're starting to kind of work on building a gaming workforce in India right now.
When you scale so fast, what are the kind of challenges that you see yourself facing? You said, of course, you're chiseling the Indian workforce with the help of a, global pipe or global input from the global workforce and building actually the talent pool in India. But apart from talent, what are the other challenges that you're facing?
I think talent, without doubt, and what I talked about was talent primarily on the content front, like content production. Talent is broadly, I would say, the biggest challenge, in front of the industry right now, because as I said, not only we're talking about content, but eventually you have to deliver this content to the digital media that we have, and you have to deliver it in a scalable and stable way. And as we have been trying to do, and I think if any company is not doing that in the next 5 years, they're going to be dinosaurs, which is hyper-personalizing your content. All of that requires heavy investments in data science, AI, and technology. And so that part of the talent pool also continues to be a challenge. It's not a challenge that we have solved for completely in India yet, in terms of just making sure that there's an adequate pool of people when it comes to technology, data science, and AI. And it's a harder challenge to solve for. And that's not a challenge you can solve by looking globally, because it's not like you don't have great talent in India. You have some of the best talent in India when it comes to technology and data science. You just don't have enough of it yet. So that's definitely a big challenge that the industry faces. Outside of that, I think infrastructure is always a challenge, but I think the speed at which our infrastructure is growing and improving, the 5G rollout hopefully happens. Those I don't see as challenges that wouldn't naturally get surmounted over the next few years. But talent certainly continues to be a challenge.
I want to talk about these the regulatory aspects. Government regulatory challenges, they're not new to the space as well. Now, recently in India, the government has proposed a 28% GST tax slab on online gaming. I think you've dealt with similar challenges in the past when you were forced to shut down after High Court order in Tamil Nadu. What do you make of this increase in GST? What is the impact and the perception that that real money gambling is the same as gambling?
Right. So I think to your point about Tamil Nadu, and I think let's just stay with that for a minute. A number of states in India particularly in the south, did pass laws in 2020, banning games of skill. But our view has always been based on the strong history of jurisprudence that you have in India when it comes to games of skill. Our courts, even as far back as the 1960s, the Supreme Court of India, and this is, I believe, in a 5-judge bench, it was a very large bench, basically ruled that games of skill are business activities that are protected as a fundamental right to trade. I mean, in other words, there is no difference. If you were to, you have a fundamental right to go out, if you're really good at chess, to go out, play a chess tournament where there's some entry fees and prizes to be won. And if a state bans games of skill, they're saying you cannot leverage your right, your skill set at playing chess. As far as the law is concerned, the Supreme Court has ruled rummy and fantasy sports, and some of the high courts have even ruled poker to be a game of skill. As far as the law is concerned, there is really no difference between any of these games and chess and golf or cricket. They all fall under the same bucket. And that's what subsequently the high courts of all of these states did, whether it be Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, or Kerala. They said these are constitutionally protected activities and you can regulate them, but you cannot ban them. And I think it's very important to understand the distinction between games of skill and gambling. Betting and gambling is an entry under the Constitution of India, under the state list. It sits in the Constitution of India. But betting and gambling now has been interpreted by multiple high courts and the Supreme Court actually to mean only covering games of chance and not including games of skill. So, the distinction is very, very clear. And this is what also we have tried to bring to the attention of the government, both when it comes to generally regulating games of skill, but also the GST matter. So yes, I mean, the 28% GST, by the way, just to kind of make a small point on the 28% GST. The 28% GST going from 18% would certainly slow the industry down. It's going to, it's an additional cost that the operators are going to have to pay. It is certainly going to slow us down. It will mean lesser investment in growth going forward, both domestically and globally. But it's not going to kill the industry. It's something that the industry could potentially absorb. Our concern that we've expressed to the government is less about 28% GST and more about what 28% GST is actually levied on. Currently, we pay 18% GST on our revenues or our commission or the service charge that we collect from users for providing a platform to play. Because we are not really playing with the users, they're playing with each other. We're just providing a platform. What will certainly hurt the industry pretty badly and potentially cripple it would be levying 28% GST on the user entry fee pool. And that's been our main argument to the government. We want to contribute more to the tax pool of India, but we also want to contribute more to employment and growth. And so, our argument has been, let's find a balance where we can contribute more to the tax pool, but without potentially crippling the growth that this industry could drive in the digital economy.
Right. So, there is this draft bill on online gaming, which is expected soon. And the government says it is to ensure consumer and gamer protection. And there is news that there could be guardrails set up, like a limit on the money spent daily by players on in-game purchases. They've also said something about setting up of a self-regulatory organization to ensure safety and accountability. What's your view on this?
We are big proponents of consumer protection. I mean, I think, unfortunately, we have not done a good job in talking to the world about this, but we have invested in responsible play going all the way back to 2012, 2013. So we're part of EGF, the e-Gaming Federation, which has a very comprehensive code of conduct, which covers responsible play, consumer protection, player limits, KYC, no bots, all of this stuff. That is, the whole code of conduct has been drawn up by EGF, consulting foreign regulators that have set up regulations in foreign jurisdictions. We follow that. We get audited by one of the big 4 audit firms every year on that code of conduct. In addition to that, we go above and beyond. Our AI and data science team not only builds models to personalize user experiences, but it also builds models to detect players who potentially might be going overboard. And then we have a whole system running from a survey that is designed by a professional psychologist that players are forced to take if our AI systems flag them as potentially risky players. Based on the survey responses, they're actually sent for counseling. Counselors that we pay for that are trained by experts, again, internationally, that have experience dealing with these kind of issues. So we have invested very, very heavily in this area. In fact, the proposals that we have submitted to the government is asking the government to make this part of the overall policy, that we should have strong consumer protection in place. What won't help is some sort of universal time and money limit. We're all very different people. Some of our customers are older and retired. They have more time, and some of our customers are younger. They have lesser time. Some of our customers don't have that much money to spend on entertainment. Some of our customers have more money to spend on entertainment. So some sort of a universal time and money limit is just not going to be productive. If I say that you cannot spend, let's say, more than 200 rupees a day on gaming, which is 6,000 rupees a month. Now, 6,000 rupees a month might not be a lot of money for an IT engineer, let's say, who's a senior IT engineer. But 6,000 rupees a month is a lot of money for somebody who drives an auto rickshaw. So the idea of coming up with universal and time limits just doesn't work if you look at the global experience. What you need and what the world is moving towards more and more in Europe and in the US is using, now we have such sophisticated AI out there to detect player patterns that are pointing towards some sort of risky behavior, and then flag these players and take them through a journey which basically forces them to adopt more responsible ways to play. And that's what has been our argument to the government, that is the way to go. We can learn from the world as to what they have tried in terms of building responsible play systems, and not do stuff that's going to be counterproductive. I mean, time and money limits, if you think about it, are also extremely hard to enforce. If I put a limit on you that you cannot play for more than 3,000 or 2,000 rupees on games 24/7, you can still play for 2,000 rupees on my site, and then 2,000 rupees on another site, and another site, and another site. Not to mention all the international gray market operators that don't have to abide by these rules. So the last thing we want is a system which forces domestic operators like us, responsible operators by us, to start following these kind of rules, but the customers don't benefit because the customers are just going to play with international operators or other gray market operators that don't follow these rules. So that's at least been our humble submission to the government.
Right. And then, how are you sort of taking that forward? You have made representations, and what's come of it in terms of talks?
I think the general response we've received, both in our conversations with the central government and the state governments, is very constructive. I think they appreciate the concerns that we are pointing out. But obviously, the government's job, the government's biggest job, is to protect consumers, right? So, and we want to do that too. We definitely think the government should put consumer protection measures in place. And we're just hopeful that the government will find that right balance, that consumer protection is balanced with industry growth and industry prospects. And most importantly, keeping in mind that the internet is a hard space to regulate, that there are no domestic boundaries, that today players are playing on all kinds of international sites, And so whatever regulation you bring in should support the domestic industry and actually be, create barriers for the international operators that are operating within India now, rather than the other way around.
Vikram, I've got the last set of two questions, I think, or for you. And I wanted to check with you, on monetization. Globally, a large chunk of monetization for online games is through in-app purchases. And advertising perhaps is a smaller component of the revenue. But in India, gaming platforms are reliant on advertising-based revenue models because the average revenue per user is quite small. How do you see monetization changing for gaming platforms in India, in the years to come?
Yeah, that is a challenge because I don't think advertising alone as a revenue model gets you very far. And again, I think we should differentiate here between the free-to-play games, or the freemium games as they are called, where you can install and download and play for free, but then there are in-app purchases, in the skill gaming industry, which is where we largely operate. In skill gaming, obviously the revenue model is different. We collect a service charge. As far as the free-to-play games industry is concerned, that's certainly been a challenge. That in-app purchases, haven't kind of gone in the direction that they have in the US. I wish I had an immediate answer to that question. If I did, we would be doing much better in the free-to-play space in India, another space that we operate in. Another of the reasons why we are starting to look at the global market and not just at India specifically. But I do think that with crypto coming in, and this might take time. The reason skill gaming's worked in India, because I think that the Indian consumer is always asking, what's in it for me? The Indian consumer is, and this is not just true for gaming, even if you look at streaming content, if you look at, for instance, some of the global companies that came to India with streaming content, as far as monetization is concerned, I don't think it has met anybody's expectations as of now. So the Indian consumer is definitely, more more examining in terms of what they want to pay when it comes to entertainment. And that's why this is one of the reasons we started out with skill gaming. I think what crypto might allow you to do is bring that skill gaming model in some sense into the free to play world, not by making the free to play games skill games, but because crypto has value outside of the gaming ecosystem. The fact that you could earn crypto or that you could have certain tradables inside games, so if you buy some in-app purchase item in a game that has value, but now on the blockchain, you can actually sell this to another user. I think that could be a very powerful dynamic for Indian users who have been more reluctant to pay for in-app purchases. But this is all, I would say, still speculative.
My last question is, as India's 99th unicorn, how have you navigated the funding environment? You raised 75 million US dollars, taking your valuation to US dollars to your valuation 2.5 billion US dollars earlier this year. Your business model is based on unit economics. The dependencies on external capital may be limited. So what's your focus then, when it comes to fundraising?
So our utilization of funds continues to be in all the areas that we talked about. One is content development, and content development, as I said, both for the Indian and global markets. We have separate studios inside the business right now that are making content that is specifically focused towards India. Some of this content is going to be, again, older content, but brought on with interesting twists. Some of the content is going to be newer content, but mostly in the skill gaming arena. And then we're also developing free-to-play games for the global market. So some of the proceeds that we have used will certainly go into content development. Some of it will go into marketing in terms of growing our business in markets where we are less prevalent right now. So for instance, we see a lot of opportunity in, still substantial opportunity for growth in markets in the north of India for certain of our products. So will be, some of the investment we raise will go into marketing. And then a significant part of our investment will continue to go into what's been the biggest strength for our business all along, which is data science, AI, and technology. We continue to hire the best talent, and the best talent always tends to be very expensive, and invest in the best technologies. So that will continue to be a focus area for us going forward.
All right. Well, Vikram, thank you so very much for this interesting conversation and some of the insights into the gaming space and especially what it could possibly mean for India. Thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts today.
Thank you, Miloni. Thank you for having me.